Deafening sirens scream through the $100 million energy hub as the massive Titan 1 unit freezes. Red warning lights pulse like a dying heart, signaling a catastrophic system failure. The ice-cold CEO, Elena Wright, glares at her 20 elite engineers, who are drenched in sweat and clutching useless data files. With only 90 minutes until a total blackout, the pressure is lethal. In the shadows, Aaron Miles, a single dad in grease-stained overalls, watches the floor vibrate. "Do we have another genius here?" Elena sneers. The room erupts in mocking laughter. They see a janitor. He sees the truth. The man's name is Aaron Miles. At 41, he carries the weight of a world he once led and then left behind. He stands 6'1", with broad shoulders that seem accustomed to heavy loads, though today they only bear the burden of a blue-collar maintenance uniform. His face is a roadmap of quiet resilience, fine lines around eyes that have squinted into the white-hot core of turbines and the dark depths of data centers. In the glass-walled waiting room just outside the chaotic control center, his 9-year-old daughter Lily sits patiently. She is a beacon of innocence in this temple of cold technology, her blonde hair messy from a long day at the harbor school. She's focused on her sketchbook, meticulously coloring a house with a red roof and a garden full of flowers. Every few minutes she looks up, her eyes searching for the tall silhouette of her father through the heavy glass. To her, he isn't a maintenance man or a fallen genius. He is her entire world. The person who makes the best grilled cheese sandwiches and knows exactly how to fix a broken doll or a bad dream. She is the only reason Aaron wakes up in the morning, the only reason he tolerates the condescending glances of men who have half his talent but twice his ego. Aaron is officially a shift maintenance technician, part of the grease crew responsible for the facility's auxiliary plumbing and basic structural upkeep. To the elite, he is a ghost in the machine, the man who fixes leaky faucets or replaces the air filters while the real engineers handle the billion-dollar logic. But beneath the grease-stained surface, Aaron has a history they don't know. 15 years ago, Aaron Miles was a name whispered with reverence in the halls of global infrastructure firms. He was a prodigy of systems integration, the man who designed the fail-safe protocols for the London power grid and the desalinization plants in the Middle East. He was at the absolute peak of his career until the night the lights went out in his own life. A tragic accident on a rainy highway took his wife, Sarah, leaving him with an infant daughter and a heart full of ash. In the wake of her death, the high-pressure world of international travel, midnight crisis calls, and million-dollar stakes felt like a hollow game. He realized that Sarah had died while he was in Singapore, fixing a data center for people who didn't even know his last name. He made a vow then. Lily would never be second to a machine again. He walked away from his 6-figure salary, his titles, and his fame. He chose the most stable, most invisible job he could find. He chose a life where the biggest crisis was a clogged drain, so he could be home for every bedtime story and every school play. He traded his ambition for her safety, burying his brilliance under layers of modesty and a silence that most people mistook for ignorance. The woman currently dominating the control room is Elena Wright. At 37, she is a force of nature. As the CEO of Wright Energy, she has fought her way through a male-dominated industry with a combination of terrifying intellect and a heart of ice. She is now less than 90 minutes away from activating Titan 1, a new turbine unit that is the centerpiece of a strategic contract with the national government. If the unit fails to synchronize today, the legal penalties will trigger a clause that could see Wright Energy stripped of its primary licenses. Elena's leadership style is built on the pillars of efficiency and meritocracy. She believes that human worth is directly correlated to technical output and academic pedigree. As she watches the engineers fail, she feels a sense of betrayal. She had surrounded herself with the best, yet they were proving to be useless. The silence in the room isn't just a lack of noise. It's a vacuum where her confidence used to be. Elena is a rationalist to a fault. She believes in data, in pedigree, and in power. She has hired 20 of the best engineers from 5 different international contractors. These men arrived in black SUVs, carrying proprietary software and carrying themselves with the arrogance of gods. Yet after 6 hours of frantic work, they are stumped. The scene inside the control room is a portrait of high-tech desperation. The air is thick with the ozone smell of overtaxed electronics and the sour scent of human fear. Diagnostic computers are screaming contradictory data. One terminal reports a fuel injection lag, another indicates a total vacuum seal failure in the primary housing. There is no logic to the errors. Aaron stands at the far edge of the room, leaning against a vibration-dampened steel pillar. He isn't holding a tablet or wearing a headset. He is simply listening. While the engineers stare at flickering screens, Aaron is feeling the floor. He senses a subtle rhythmic shudder, a zero point 0.7 hertz deviation that occurs exactly every 12 seconds. It's a sound so faint that the industrial noise of the cooling fans masks it for everyone else. But to Aaron, it's a scream of pain from the machine's heart. He's taking mental notes, mapping the flow of energy through the turbine's massive bone structure. Elena's eyes, sharp and predatory, snap to him. She is looking for someone to blame, and the sight of a maintenance man standing idle in her command center is like a spark to gasoline. To her, he is a symbol of the low-level incompetence she despises. She doesn't see the veteran engineer who has diagnosed the fault in 10 minutes. She sees a janitor taking a break while her world falls apart. The clock on the wall glows with a menacing crimson. 1:10:45. The Titan 1 unit is heating up but not spinning. The tension reaches a jagged breaking point. Marcus, the lead contractor from a German firm, a man with 3 PhDs and an ego to match, wipes a bead of cold sweat from his glasses. He looks at Elena, his voice cracking. Ms. Wright, the sensor data is irreconcilable. We believe the issue is within the primary control assembly's firmware. It's a logic loop we can't bypass here. We need to ship the unit back to the manufacturer for a full rebuild. Elena's face turns a shade of white that borders on gray. Rebuild? Marcus, if that unit doesn't go online in 60 minutes, I lose the government contract. If I lose that contract, Wright Energy ceases to exist by Monday morning. You're telling me that 20 of the most expensive mines in the world can't fix a motor? It's not just a motor, it's a... Marcus starts, but Elena cuts him off with a roar. I don't care about the terminology. I am paying for results, not excuses. Is there not a single person in this room who actually knows how to solve this? Or am I paying for 20 expensive decorations? The room falls into a humiliated, heavy silence. The high-paid engineers look at their shoes. It is in this vacuum of competence that Aaron Miles takes a single, deliberate step forward. The heavy, rhythmic thud of his work boots on the raised metal floor draws every eye. Marcus sneers, looking at Aaron's grease-smeared boots. You're in the wrong room, buddy. The mop buckets are down the hall. The firmware is fine, Aaron says, ignoring the insult. His voice is a low, calm baritone, the sound of a man who hasn't felt panic in a decade. The software is doing exactly what it was told to do. It's the physical reality that's wrong. Elena turns slowly, her eyes narrowing as they rake over his grease-smeared face and the maintenance patch on his chest. She lets out a dry, biting laugh that sounds like a whip cracking. And who exactly are you? The plumber here to fix the toilets? She asks, her voice dripping with venom. Aaron Miles, auxiliary maintenance, he replies, unruffled. I've been watching your telemetry for 40 minutes. Give me 5 minutes at the console and 30 seconds of silence, and I can tell you exactly why that unit won't sync. The engineers erupt into a chorus of scoffing and laughter. Marcus steps forward, his face red with indignation. Do you hear this? The maintenance man thinks he's a genius. Tell me, Aaron, does your wrench also have a PhD in fluid dynamics? This is a digital integration system with triple redundant logic gates, not a leaky pipe in the basement. Aaron doesn't defend his past or his ego. He looks past the engineers, fixing his gaze directly on Elena. He sees the desperation in her eyes, a fear that mirrors the one he saw in his own reflection on the night Sarah died. He knows she's terrified of losing everything, but unlike her, he knows exactly how to fix what's broken. I'm not a genius, he says quietly, but I am the only one in this room who knows that your sensors are lying to you. You're looking at the digital shadow of the problem. I'm looking at the problem itself. The room goes silent again. There is an unshakable weight to Aaron's words, a confidence that only comes from a man who has mastered his craft. Elena is desperate. She is cornered. She looks at the clock. 00:55:12. She sees the mocking smiles of the engineers and decides to use Aaron as a sacrificial lamb to vent her frustration. Fine, Elena snaps, her voice cold enough to freeze blood. 5 minutes. But understand the stakes, Mr. Miles. My team will record every second of this. If you touch that unit and fail, or if you waste even 1 second of our remaining time, you are fired. Not just from this facility, but I will make sure you never find work in this industry again. You and your daughter will be out of the harbor gates by sunset. Do we have a deal? Aaron thinks of Lily in the other room. He knows he's gambling their stability, their quiet life. He looks through the glass and sees Lily drawing a sun in the corner of her page. She looks up and gives him a small, encouraging thumbs up. Aaron's heart tightens. He knows the machine. He knows it like an old friend. He nods. Deal. He has one request. Kill the auxiliary power to the cooling fans for 30 seconds. I need to hear the transition between the primary and secondary stages. The engineers erupt again. That's madness. The housing will overheat. We'll lose the diagnostic buffers, they cry. Marcus steps in Elena's way. Ms. Wright, you can't let this amateur ruin a $100 million asset. He has no idea what he's doing. But Elena, driven by a predatory curiosity and the sheer lack of other options, waves her hand with a sharp authority. Do it. Kill the fans. Let the genius have his stage. If the turbine melts, at least I'll have the pleasure of watching a man realize his own insignificance. The lights in the room dim as the massive cooling fans spin down. The roar that has defined the last 6 hours fades into a heavy, unnatural silence. Aaron stands by the turbine housing, his eyes closed, his hand resting lightly on the vibrating metal. Start the sequence, Aaron commands. Start, stop, start. Exactly 4 seconds apart. Marcus sneers but obeys. The machine groans, a heavy, stuttering, metallic struggle that sends a shudder through the very foundation of the building. To the engineers, it's just another failed start. But Aaron's head tilts. He isn't watching the waveforms on the monitors. He is feeling the resonance in his palm. Again, he says. Same rhythm. The second time, the shudder is louder. A technician laughs. See? You're just breaking it more. Give it up, janitor. Aaron doesn't respond. He has found it. He opens his eyes and for a split second, the maintenance man vanishes. In his place stands the master engineer of a decade ago, a man with absolute terrifying clarity. He reaches into his small handheld toolkit and pulls out a simple tarnished socket wrench. Machines don't lie, Aaron says, his voice ringing through the silent room. But people who only look at screens forget how to feel the iron. He looks at Elena, his gaze piercing. Your software is perfect. Your sensors are fine, but your reality is flawed. Disable sensor 7B, Aaron commands as he moves toward the rear of the turbine. The room explodes. No! Marcus screams, lunging toward the console. Sensor 7B is the primary stability monitor. If we bypass that, the entire governor system will go blind. The unit will tear itself off the mounts. This is sabotage. Aaron doesn't even look back. He continues walking toward a small, obscure access panel hidden behind a labyrinth of hydraulic lines. Elena, he says, using her first name for the first time, a move that shocks the room. The sensor isn't blind. It's hallucinating. It's sensing a ghost, and because the software is too smart, it's trying to correct for a problem that doesn't exist. You're fighting a shadow. Disable the sensor and let me fix the light. Elena stares at him. For the first time, she notices the stillness in his hands. Her elite engineers were trembling, but Aaron was as steady as the steel around them. She sees the absolute lack of doubt in his eyes. She looks at her 20 experts, then back at the man who hasn't looked at a screen once. Disable 7B, she orders. But Ms. Wright, Marcus begins. Do it, she roars. The sensor feed on the main screen goes flat. The alarms change pitch, becoming more urgent. Aaron is now kneeling on the floor, his body contorted to reach the hidden panel. This specific panel isn't on the standard maintenance checklist. It's a design flaw Aaron recognized from a project he worked on 12 years ago in South Korea. He unscrews the panel with rapid fluid motions. The 20 engineers huddle around, their high-definition cameras recording his every move, ready to capture the moment he destroys the unit. Inside the panel, Aaron points to a tiny microfiber connection no thicker than a strand of hair. It looks perfect to the naked eye. He pulls out a small jeweler's loop and holds it out to Marcus. "Look," Aaron says. Marcus scoffs but leans in. Through the lens, he sees it, a microscopic layer of white oxidation, almost invisible, but just enough to create a high-frequency interference. "It's a cross-phase interference," Aaron explains to the silent room. "The 0.7 Hz resonance from the cooling pump is bleeding into this oxidized connection. To the computer, it looks like a catastrophic pressure drop. So it shuts down the fuel injection to save the unit. The software isn't failing. It's being lied to by a piece of dirt." The room is so quiet you can hear the hum of the emergency lights. The engineers look at each other, their faces turning from pale to ashen. They had spent 6 hours looking for $1 million software bug, and they were defeated by a microscopic layer of rust. Aaron takes a simple, lint-free cloth and a small bottle of specialized solvent from his bag. He cleans the contact with the tenderness of a mother cleaning a child's wound. Then he replaces the panel, but he doesn't just screw it back in. He adjusts the tightening torque of the 4-corner bolts by hand, turning them, stopping, feeling the resistance, and then giving them a final, precise nudge. "Most of you tighten until the tool clicks," Aaron says, his voice calm and instructional. "But temperature changes and vibration shift the metal. You have to tighten until the metal breathes." He stands up, wipes his hands on a greasy rag, and looks at the bridge. The clock shows 00:32:15. "Start the cycle," he says. "Full power synchronization. Don't hold back." The lead technician at the console looks at Marcus. Marcus, his arrogance shattered, simply nods. He presses the sequence. The Titan 1 unit begins to spin. Usually this stage is accompanied by a violent, bone-rattling shudder. But this time it is different. The turbine begins to hum, a deep, soulful, perfect resonance. The vibration on the floor isn't a struggle, it's a song. The sound transitions from a low growl to a magnificent, high-pitched purr that feels like it could power the world. On the massive control monitors, the red icons blink out one by one. They are replaced by a sea of calm, beautiful green. The stability markers are flat lines. The output is 100% of capacity. The control room is paralyzed. 20 elite engineers, the smartest men money could buy, are staring at their screens in a state of shock. The silence is absolute, broken only by the perfect hum of the machine. Elena Wright stands at the railing, her hand over her mouth. She had been ready to watch this man fail, ready to cast him out. Instead, she just watched him perform a miracle with a cloth and a wrench. She looks down at the maintenance man who just saved her empire, and for the first time in 10 years, she doesn't feel like the most powerful person in the room. "I need a cross-verification on all sectors. Now," Elena finally says, her voice trembling with a mixture of relief and disbelief. The engineers scramble, but the energy in the room has shifted entirely. There is no more arguing, no more ego. They are frantic to record every detail of what Aaron did. They are treating his maintenance log like a holy text. Every test comes back flawless. The unit isn't just working, it's performing better than it did during the initial factory simulations. Elena walks slowly down the stairs from the command bridge. She stops 3 feet in front of Aaron. The arrogance that has been her armor for a decade has been stripped away. In front of her entire team, and the camera still recording for the national corporate feed, she bows her head. "I owe you more than an apology, Aaron," she says, her voice carrying across the quiet room. "I judged you by the grease on your hands and the patch on your chest. I almost destroyed this company because I was too blind to see the genius standing right in front of me. You aren't just a maintenance man. You are the most brilliant systems engineer I have ever encountered." She turns to Marcus and the other contractors. Pack your things. Your contracts are terminated for incompetence. I don't pay for degrees. I pay for results. She turns back to Aaron, her eyes searching his. She realizes that his calm didn't come from a lack of care, but from a depth of character she hadn't yet understood. Aaron, I'm offering you the position of Executive Vice President of Systems Integration. You'll have a private office, a 7-figure salary, and total authority over every technical aspect of Right Energy. You can change the world from here. The room is silent, waiting for him to leap at the opportunity. The engineers look at him with a new, desperate respect, already wondering how to get on his good side. Aaron looks at the clock on the wall. It's 3:55 p.m. Through the glass, he sees Lily closing her sketchbook. She's looking at the door, waiting for him. He remembers the cold nights after Sarah died, when he sat by Lily's crib and realized that no machine in the world was worth a single minute of her childhood. I have a condition, Aaron says. The room holds its breath. They expect him to ask for millions in stock options or a private jet. I'll take the job, Aaron says, but I leave at 4 p.m. every single day. No weekends, no overtime, no exceptions. And my daughter gets a desk in the quiet zone of the executive floor so she can do her homework while I finish my afternoon reports. My time as a genius is secondary to my time as a father. Do we have a deal? Elena looks at Lily, who is now standing by the glass, her eyes wide with hope. Elena, a woman who had sacrificed everything for her career, felt a pang of something she hadn't felt in years, admiration. Not for his skill, but for his priorities. Deal, Elena says softly. Welcome to the team, Mr. Miles. The culture of the control room changes in that single moment. The mocking laughter of the morning is gone, replaced by a profound, humble focus. They realized that day that the most important person in the building wasn't the one with the loudest voice or the cleanest suit. It was the man who knew how to listen. Aaron finishes his shift, packs his small, tarnished toolkit, and walks toward the glass doors of the waiting room. Lily sees him and her face lights up with a joy that worth more than any corporate empire. She runs to him and Aaron scoops her up, spinning her around. Did you fix the big machine, Daddy? She asks, her arms wrapped around his neck. I just had a little chat with it, Lily, he says, smiling as he kisses her forehead. It was just feeling a little misunderstood. Elena Wright watches them from the balcony of the control room. She sees a man who could have had everything, but chose to be a father first. She thinks about the billion-dollar contract she just saved, but her mind keeps going back to the microscopic piece of oxidation Aaron cleaned with a rag. She realizes that her empire isn't built on steel and software. It's built on the integrity of people she used to think were invisible. She walks down to them before they leave. She kneels down to Lily's level. Your daddy is a hero, Lily, she says, her voice warmer than anyone in the building has ever heard it. Lily smiles, showing a missing tooth. I know. He can fix anything. I think he just fixed me too, Elena whispers, mostly to herself. The 20 engineers are left behind in the control room, staring at the machines they thought they understood. They learned a lesson that no university could teach them. Data is just a shadow of reality. True wisdom doesn't come from a computer. It comes from the human capacity to pay attention, to care, and to listen. The Right Energy facility operates flawlessly from that day on. Aaron Miles becomes a legend in the industry, not for his titles, but for his character. He proves that you don't need to shout to be heard, and you don't need a suit to be a leader. He remains the man who leaves at 4 p.m., the man who prioritizes a fourth-grade drawing over a board meeting. Years later, Elena would often say that the most important moment in Right Energy's history wasn't the activation of Titan 1, but the moment a maintenance man stood up and dared to ask for 30 seconds of silence. Value isn't found in what you wear or how much you're paid. It's found in what you do when the world is falling apart and no one thinks you can save it. Aaron Miles didn't just save a power unit. He saved the soul of a company by reminding them that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one who holds the key to the future. If you believe you should never look down on someone just because of their position, subscribe for more stories and leave a comment. Do you think real-world experience and listening are more important than fancy technology?